Hello, dear friends. It's Parshat Emor, which is Leviticus chapters 22, 23. And I'd like to talk about something that relates to this Parsha. And we just commemorated it this past Friday. And it's called Pesach Sheni, second Pesach. What exactly is the second Pesach, second Passover? And why do you need a second Passover? Why don't we have a second Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Sukkot or Shavuot? Why specifically a second Passover? And also, why is the second Passover only one day when there's 7 days of Passover? The answer to this we'll discover in this week's Parsha. But first, I want to go back to Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 9. We will see the source of this idea. So the Torah says in Bamidbar, there are some householders, the translation is not the best, who are impure because they had to bury a relative. Right? Impurity in the Torah is when you're in contact with a dead body is one of the main reasons for impurity. So, of course, if you have to bury a direct relative, you go into the graveyard. Sometimes you're even, whether you're directly in touch with the corpse or just in the vicinity, that's called tameh. And there has to be, and in antiquity, there was a ceremony, the ashes of the red heifer, as brought in the book of Numbers and the book of Devarim. And this was done, and then in order to purify the person from that. There are different types of purification. Also, there's purification in rainwater, what we call the mikvah, etc. So these people who became impure because they had to bury a direct relative, they could not participate in the Passover offering of that year. So they appeared before Moses and Aaron. This is already in the Midbar, in the desert. And they said to them, we were impure because we had a relative who passed away. We were not allowed, we were barred from presenting God's offering at the time, together with the rest of Israelites. What can we do? It's not fair. We want to be part of this too. We wanted to bring that offering to God on the night of Passover, but we were not allowed to. Moses didn't know. He said, stand by and I'll ask. I'll hear what God instructs me. And God said to Moses, the Hebrew here, of course, is God in Hebrew. And God said to Moses, speak to the Israelite people saying, when any party, whether your posterity with the, okay, I find the English very difficult, but I should have put it in the Hebrew. Whenever you have a person who is defiled by a corpse, or is on a long journey and also barred from doing it just because the time factor until they come back is going to take too long, they can still offer the Passover offering to God. When shall they do it? By the way, you should notice that God answered him more than he had asked. He asked just about people who are tameh, who are impure. God said even people who are far away on a long journey. In the Mishnah, by the way, there's a discussion. What is considered a long journey? I continue. Verse 11. They shall offer it in the second month. Here, the first month is called the month of Nisan, because the Torah says that the month of Nisan, when they left Egypt, is considered the first month. And the second one, of course, is the month of Iyar. On the 14th day of that month, at the twilight, which means in the afternoon, they shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, just like the original Paschal offering. They shall not leave any of it until morning, which means they eat it all night. They shall not break a bone of it, like in the original Paschal offering in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 49. Chapter 12 in general. They shall offer it in strict accord with the laws of the Passover sacrifice, which are in, again, Exodus 12. If any party who is pure and not on a journey refrains from offering the Passover, meaning there was no valid excuse, that person will be punished by what's called karet, which is usually translated as being cut off. They shall bear the guilt. Now, here's another interesting addition. And when a stranger who resides with you offers a Passover sacrifice, what today we would call a convert, it must be offered in accordance with the rules and rites of the Passover sacrifice, because there shall be one law for all of you, whether the stranger or the citizen of the country. Now, this same verse 14 is to be found exactly in Shmot in Exodus 12:49. So we knew that already about the original Paschal offering, but here it's also about Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, which means, let's say somebody converted to Judaism just after Passover happened. So they weren't a Jew. They cannot bring the Passover sacrifice. So these people also can bring the Passover sacrifice on the 14th day of Iyar, a month later. And of course, they have to do all the preparations. And if they were in touch with the corpse, they have to be, of course, with the ashes of red heifer, etc. So we have here three different types of people who can offer the Paschal offering on the second Pesach Sheni. And this is on the 14th day of Iyar. And who are the three? The three people are those who were impure, and therefore they missed out. They didn't have time to do the preparations of purity because they had to bury a direct relative. Those who were just too far away and the journey would have taken too long to make it back. For whatever reason, this was a journey they had to make. And people who converted into Judaism, and either conversion was right before Pesach, so where there was no time, or even after Passover, they can prepare themselves and bring the Paschal offering on the 14th of the next month of Iyar. Now, why the 14th? And why one day? Now I want to go to this week's Parsha, which is Parshat Emor, from the book of Leviticus, from Vayikra. Now look at the way it describes here the Passover festival. These are the set times of God, the sacred occasions, what we call the festivals, which you shall celebrate each at its appointed time. In the first month, and I mentioned the first month is called Nisan. This is the month of Passover, the month of the spring, when we left Egypt. As we left Egypt, God tells Moses, chapter 12 in Shemot again, that it's the first month. So on the 14th day of that month, at twilight, you shall bring the Passover offering. In Hebrew, it says Bein Ha'arbaim. The way it's interpreted Bein Ha'arbaim is that the preparations, this is the way we normally do it, by the way, on the 14th of Nisan, when there was the temple and we brought the Paschal offering. After midday, you start the preparations, meaning the early afternoon, you make the preparations for the Paschal offering. You bring the keves, which is the sheep, and then it's prepared, and certain things are done in the temple. And after the preparation in the evening, all the people in that party participate in a small amount of the Paschal offering together with the bitter herbs and the unleavened bread, the matzah and the maror. And they say Hallel, they say what's called the prayer of praise, which are usually verses from the Psalm, chapters from the Psalms. And also we tell the story of leaving Egypt. So this is what happens in the Paschal offering, and that happens the first night. That first night is called Pesach. What happens during the day, on the 14th, which we call Erev Pesach, right before Pesach, it's actually the day of Pesach 14, and the night, that's called the day of the Paschal offering. In Hebrew, the day of Pesach. Now look how it continues. On the first month, and on the 15th day of that same month, that's called the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, Chag Matzot. You shall eat matzah for 7 days. And the first day you shall celebrate a sacred occasion, what's called the Yom Tov in Hebrew. You shall not do any malacha, any work. 7 days, you shall make offerings to God during that time of Chag HaMatzot, which is called the Festival of the Matzah. So the Torah actually describes it in two parts. Part one is called Pesach, which means the festival of the Paschal offering. It's the 14th into the night of the 15th. So that it overlaps, of course, with Chag HaMatzot, with the festival of the matzah, of the unleavened bread. Festival of matzah is a full 7 days, which you can only eat matzah and you cannot eat anything leavened. And of course, the first night is when you're eating the Paschal offering that you prepared on the 14th of that month. So that even today, even though today synonymously we say Passover, Pesach, and the festival of matzah, of the unleavened bread, the Torah actually differentiates and says 14th is when you brought the Paschal offering into the night, and then it's called Chag HaMatzot. This will now explain why on the month of Iyar, when we do second Passover, it's only one day. It's the 14th and into the night of the 15th, because they're not trying to make up for the festival of Chag HaMatzot, or the festival of the unleavened bread. They're trying to make up for the Paschal offering. Now, why do they want to make up for the Paschal offering? The significance of the Paschal offering, there are a few things here. Remember, it's the Egypt story. The Jewish people have now become a people. This is the weekend of the coronation of King Charles in England. You might say this is the coronation of the whole people of Israel, the birth of the people of Israel coming out of Egypt. And by the way, when there were Jewish kings, so Nisan was the first month of the enumeration of the Jewish kings. So we came out of Egypt on that night between the 14th and the 15th, which we call the night of the 15th. And that's when we brought the offering, the Paschal offering, the Pesach. And we had it with the unleavened bread. And then we continued and we had the festival for later generations of Passover for another 7 days because the bread did not rise. By the way, I heard a very interesting interpretation. Why is it that we eat unleavened bread together with a Paschal offering? Because the interpretation that the Torah gives after this, in Shemot 12, is that you're supposed to bring also the unleavened bread because we left in haste. But we left in haste after we had ate the Paschal offering in the Egypt story. So the interesting interpretation I heard, this lady wrote a book about it, says that in Egypt was like the center of bread making in antiquity. We know the story, of course, of Joseph, who gathered the grain in Egypt for the 7 years of plenty to the 7 years of famine, and people from all over came to Egypt for bread and for grain. Egypt perfected bread making. Until Egyptian times, people did not use yeast. There was no leavening agent. They just took the flour and water, made dough, put it over the fire, sort of like the Bedouins do today with their pita, and that's the way people ate. The Egyptians perfected the idea of leavening the bread, which took, of course, time. Now, when God says to the Israelites to eat your Paschal offering, which is going to be the offering of freedom because you're going to leave slavery, you're going to leave the servitude of Egypt tonight, and you're going to be your own people. So God says, eat your bread, which is the unleavened bread, not the Egyptians' bread. Start with what you're used to as your people. Don't incorporate their culture when you want to first build up your own. Very interesting idea. And then, of course, they also for 7 days because we left in haste from Egypt. So getting back to this, the reason why second Passover is on the 14th, it's because the offering, which is being replicated again a second time, not the whole Chag HaMatzot, not the whole festival of the unleavened bread. And why this particularly? Because I said this offering is the offering of when the people were born, and everybody has to feel their relationship to the Jewish people and to God as happening on this night. We give gratitude for God for taking us out of Egypt and for making us into a people that received his Torah. So on the night of Iyar, we do this. Now, what is and therefore everybody should be able to have that opportunity. And that's why God says to Moshe, you're right. So somebody who was impure, let them have that opportunity a month. Somebody who was far away, let them have that opportunity. Somebody just became Jewish, again, it's not their fault. Let them have that opportunity. It's very important for everybody to develop their personal relationship with the people and with God. So it's important that they have a second chance. We say, it says in the book of Exodus, Ze Eli vanvehu, this is my God, and I shall Praise him, the God of my fathers, and I shall exalt him. God is both the God of our fathers, but also our God. Everybody has to have their personal relationship with God and with the Jewish people within our people. And of course, everybody's supposed to have a personal relationship with God, whether they're Jewish or not. Now, I want to say that I think there's a second dimension here which is possible to derive from this passage of Second Pesach. And I call it second chances. If we understand Second Pesach in the idea of second chances in life, it also becomes interesting. We have a paradigm, we have a model here of something which in our tradition is about second chances. What does it mean to have a second chance in life? What are our three models here? One is somebody who is impure, two is somebody who is far away, and three is somebody who just became Jewish. Let's start with number one, to be impure. Sometimes in life, we go the wrong way. We make mistakes. We even know what the mistakes were, but we did it anyhow. And then we regret, and we wonder if we can mend our ways. And we need to do it. We can do it. We have to push ourselves. Habits are easy to keep. Breaking habits is really difficult. That's called the impurity of things in our lives that we go on to get rid of. But you can do it. You can have a second chance. These are the type of things that if you reboot and try to rid yourselves of these things, there is a way to change our lives and have a second chance. We sometimes don't believe we're able to do it, but we can. The second example is somebody who's far away. Far away, of course, is being in a place, in a distance. Sometimes you're in a place where, okay, maybe you made some mistakes or just in general, life is not going well. And you're not getting along with the people of that place. As we all know, God forgives, people never do. So one of the best things is, like the Talmud, like we say in Hebrew, mishaneh makom, mishaneh mazal. You change your venue and your place, you change your luck. So you leave that place, try again, build yourself up from scratch, and be positive and be optimistic. And you'll find people who you can get along with and will like you. Don't think that the people who you were stuck with, who you didn't get along with, are the only people on this planet. There are good people out there you'll find your place. If you're not appreciated in one place, you'll be appreciated in another place. That's called somebody who's far away. The third type of a second chance is like the convert. A convert is somebody, their life was totally different until they came to us. They were 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, whatever it was. And now they decided they want to live a different type of life. That's possible. Sometimes we fantasize about different type of life that we always wanted to live. It is possible. It's not just a midlife crisis. But you need a lot of power to do that. It's not a simple thing to do. You need a lot of inner strength to do something like that. And you need to be able to imagine yourself in a new place. Because sometimes, as Rav Kook says, we have certain things that we did wrong in life, we want to fix them. But sometimes we don't know what it was that we did wrong. We just feel like everything is in the wrong direction. We want the whole story to change. Even that's possible. The story can change. And as I said, I've seen it from converts that they changed their lives. They can do it, then anybody can do it. So when you pick yourself up, you say, I lived my life one way, and now I want to be close to God. I want to do things that are significant, that are moral, that are holy. It can be done. It's just a matter of will and determination. The story of a fellow sends his kid to summer camp, Hebrew summer camp, and he comes to visit him in August. And the young boy, father comes see him, parents visiting day. The boy's not looking good. Father says to the boy, says, son, are they not treating you well here? No, they're okay. So you look awful. Says, well, it's Tisha B'Av today. Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. It's a fast day in our tradition. Says, it's Tisha B'Av today. But says, yeah, but you're 12 years old. Says, yeah, but they destroyed the temple, so it's time to fast. Father says to the child, but they destroyed our temple. That was 2,000 years ago. The boy says, yeah, but they only told me last night. Even though things happen in our history, every new generation has the chance to see it for themselves and to relate to it for themselves. But even within our lifespans, we have the chance to relate to it differently. The Hasidim say, why is there night and day? To tell you that when you wake up in the morning and see the sun, you have a second chance every day. But okay, it's not easy to make major changes, but they are possible. So this is the way I see second Pesach. Not only is it second Pesach, it also teaches us that in certain scenarios, we do have the possibility, if we want to do it, to take that second chance and prove ourselves. Shalom, shalom.